After e4, c5, knight f3, e6, knight c3, we're going to go through this move, a6, which is the main move. And now g3, as mentioned in one of the previous videos, make sure you check them out before you keep watching this saga. g3 comes now, we're going to be playing the bishop in fianchetto, so after b5, this is the move we haven't seen yet. b5 is a novelty, we're watching this in this video. What to do next? Okay, bishop g2, continue development. And now two moves we're going to primarily look at. Bishop to b7, obviously the bishop will have to go through that diagonal, or b4 immediately. If b4 comes right now, you move the knight to a4, and after bishop to b7, which is going to happen anyway, the move to continue now in order not to give up the initiative to the black player is d4. We're going to punish the fact that the black player has moved so many pawns so many times. So here, don't worry about the pawn in e4, because you are giving up this pawn, but the development you get in exchange of that is much better. So you take the pawn in c5 now, and this pawn is defended by the knight. This knight is not going to be removed from that square. The opponent is not going to take this knight, because then bishop takes back is completely over already. We have the bishop pair and terrible position for black. So let's look at this move, d6. Okay, castle. Here it's thematic to just play rook e1 and exploit this passive center of the black player. So let's make an example. Let's say if black takes this pawn now, that's completely lost. Take the queen, king takes back, rook e1 attacking the bishop. The bishop will have to move. Giving up the bishop for our knight will be really terrible move. So after bishop to b7, it looks like a normal position, but now it's already game over. Knight b6, the rook will have to move, unless black wants to give up the exchange. Rook a7, but now bishop to f4, targeting this knight. Where's the knight going to go? Wherever he goes, we're going to play. Look at our development. We are basically done moving all the pieces. Black doesn't have any of these pieces in the game. The only developed pieces will be this fianchetto bishop, which is the only good piece, and this weirdly placed rook. So let's say knight c6, for instance. Okay, well, check. King e8, and now rook to d7. Knight to f6, attacking the rook. Fine, simply slide the rook on c7, and that's it. The knight obviously can't go to d5 to attack the rook again, because you can take it for free. The white player has a plan of simply playing knight g5 and then go to f7, and that's it. If black plays h6 stopping us, then we have to play plan B, which is equally good. Knight to e5, and that's it. We have enough attackers. You have too many attackers on this diagonal. Trading is pointless because you just take back, and obviously you're pinning this bishop. Now you're going to be winning material. Position evaluated like maybe +4 or +5 as far as I remember. So let's move on and actually take it from the start. So a6, g3, b5, bishop g2, b4, knight moves, and now bishop to b7, attacking the pawn. We said we meet this with d4. So let's look at a few other ideas to see how to take this. Oh, by the way, one more thing, we have to mention that after bishop takes e4 and then we take back here, and d6, castle, we mentioned that obviously the pawn can't take in c5 without giving black a terrible game. Let's look at another developing move, normal developing move, and see how to punish this. We have so much more development. The key move here is bishop f4, and obviously we're threatening to win this pawn, and it's going to be completely game over then. We've got too many attackers over d6, and a move like e5, this is met with the thematic bishop g5. We must have seen this type of move when black has this backwards d6 pawn and the e5 pawn. You play the bishop in g5, pins the knight, and the white player will be surrendering the square, the control of the square d5 forever. So let's see, for example, bishop e7, take. Bishop takes, okay, rook e1. And now we're threatening this bishop, the bishop will have to move. Taking us will allow us to take back and then have an attack on this piece with double attack from the pawn in e5. If the bishop retreats, either way we're taking this. And you can take it from here. This is a fantastic position to play. We are completely winning for so many reasons. We've got the attack on b7. If black takes us, we can take with check, and you can take it from there. If the bishop takes, then the best move, the most accurate move is knight c6, simply winning the queen. So in this position, earlier we went through bishop takes in e4. That shouldn't be done. Let's make a brief mention of this move, c4 by black. I've encountered this move a lot, and it used to be really annoying to me. The fact is that our opponent is quite expanded on the queen side. It doesn't really mean anything, it's nothing to worry about, obviously. But you gotta be careful, because in case of successful equal trade of everything, you might end up in a bit of a passive endgame. So here we played the thematic d5. You always want to play this move when the opponent has the bishop in fianchetto and the pawn in e6. You always want to play d5 because it stops the obvious d5. You see, black always wants to play d5. You know, when they play the Caro-Kann or the French defense, they always want to play d5 here, inducing to either you taking and then black getting better, or you playing e5 and give birth to that stupid game that true chess players shouldn't want to play. So what you do is you prevent black from playing that, and you play d5 instead. Now obviously take is a disaster, especially when you're done castling. Development is on our side. So let's look at this move, d6. Okay, take, knight to g5, attacking this pawn in e6, and after queen to f6, defending that, bishop to h3, finalizing the attack over that pawn. And there's already no coming back, because if black pushes it, or maybe plays bishop to c8, you see it's terrible. Bishop to c8, you also can play knight b6. That wins material. e5. Now here the white player castles. And after h6, kicking the knight away, simply play knight e6. And here threatening knight c7, so there's no coming back here. Queen to e7 maybe, looks like the black player might be able to maybe play a normal game. No, queen h5 should end the game. So from the start, let's look at one more line, and then we're going to go a little bit more into the main topic of the video. g3, b5, bishop g2, immediate b4. Knight moves, bishop b7, d4. What happens when black takes in d4? Traditionally speaking, this the usual Sicilian move of c takes d4. Okay, well, knight takes back, and now we don't even have to worry about this pawn anymore. Our opponent has just moved loads of pawns for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Now we do have, well, it's not really that great majority, it's 3 against 2, but there's also this pawn here in d7. But the black player didn't do anything. It wasn't an expansion on the queen side, ready for an endgame where the black pawns were going to be more advanced. He basically achieved nothing. Let's look at one line just to see how to take the ideas. Now usually here, let's say knight to f6 for instance. Usually here you have this idea of playing e5. Not now, absolutely not now. But after that move, you should be able to control the large squares in the center completely. White's best move now is c4. If black were to take us en passant, we will play knight c3, defending this pawn further, as it needs to be defended. And then we will truly have a majority against minority. We would have 2 against 1. We're going to start pushing and go for already for a good advantage for the endgame. If instead black takes the pawn, it looks like a free pawn, but now castle. There's no coming back here, because we are pinning that knight. And so let's make an example. Knight to d6, moves away and also defends the bishop. We're still going to take the bishop. Knight takes back, and now queen to f3 pins the knight to the rook. That means this knight can't move without losing the rook. Knight c6, you have enough attackers. If queen to c8, then knight b6 wins a lot of material. If queen to c7, this is met with the thematic bishop f4, and you never have to worry about e5. Because when you take, then the queen takes back, but then you're going to pin the queen to the king with the rooks. If instead black plays d6, then you play c5, and that's it. Nothing to do here. Knight can't take back because queen is taking the rook. You also have an attack on c5. Pawn can't take because of the bishop attacking the queen. If bishop goes on with development, well, you've got enough attackers, and this knight isn't really moving. And if the queen moves away from the knight, you can take it. So back in this position, we mentioned how the knight going back and see if black can continue the game with the extra pawn. We mentioned that cannot happen. What happens after d5? Looks like it defends everything, but now rook e1, thematic move. We are completely developed. This pawn can't really take in c4. We got double attack over the square e4. So what happens after black tries to quickly speed up development? Too late. C takes d5. Bishop can't take back because then we'll be taking the free piece. So after pawn takes back, defending the knight, f3, the knight has to go knight f6, and now knight to f5, finalizing the attack over this bishop, and we should be winning a lot of material. If knight to c6 defended that bishop further, knight takes in g7 check. Now king d7 is a suicide, because let's say king d7, knight f5 coming back, and now you're threatening to take this bishop, and when the knight takes back, You've also got threats like knight c5 or maybe bishop g5. It's up to you. You're completely winning. If instead the black player defends the bishop further, then bishop h3, threatening a nasty discover check. King to c7, moving away from the discover check diagonal. Bishop f4 brutally finishes this game. So in this position, instead of king d7, what happens after king to h8? Now obviously, f8, bishop to h6 comes in. Here you are threatening discover check that wins the queen. So let's say king to g8, unpinning, removing the king from the diagonal. Knight to f5 comes now. Still, it's deadly move. And after black's best move is bishop to f8, queen to c1. White is threatening queen g5 checkmate to follow. So a move like rook c8 or anything else is not possible. If the bishop takes the bishop, then queen takes back with threatening mate. Queen f8 is not possible because you do queen g5 and then you checkmate anyway. And there's no coming back here. So from the start, let's look at something slightly different. e6, knight c3, a6, right? g3, and now the early pawn to b5, bishop g2, and now instead of b4 immediately, we're gonna go through bishop to b7. Okay, we go on with d4 in case you didn't understand it. And now a move like b4 will give birth to a transposition, knight a4, and this is like the game we were playing before. So you take it from there. No point to rewatch the same things. Let's look at pawn takes in d4, traditional, right? Knight to d4. And now this is slightly different from the previous variation where we showed knight f6 and so on, because there was a pawn in b4 and a knight in a4. So how to behave now? Knight to f6, queen to e2 comes now. And now let's look at two options. The black player will have to speed up development, and ideas like bishop c5 and queen c7 are thematic moves here. So let's see, bishop to c5, this is immediately attacked by the knight. Knight to b3, the bishop will have to move bishop to b6. Okay, castle. After castle, rook to d1. Development of the white player is complete. We only need to develop this bishop, the dark square bishop, but we're doing absolutely fine here. Now here, knight c6, for example, is immediately punished. Always remember this. This is why this French variation of the Sicilian is rubbish. Just like every French variation of anything in chess, just rubbish. e5 comes immediately, attacking the knight. And the knight has to move. If the knight moves, you've got plenty of attackers. You're winning a pawn. The opponent will have a isolated pawn. There's absolutely no reason to play like that. If the knight goes to e8, which seems to be the only other square available, bishop to e3 forces a swap of bishops, removing the strong dark square bishop of our opponent, allowing us to take control of the dark squares. This is an excellent move, especially when we play knight e4 and knight d6. I'm going to pile up the rooks on the d file because the d7 pawn will never move it without losing. What happens if the black player tries to keep the bishop? Let's say bishop c7, applying a lot of pressure over e5. Knight c5 now should end the game because you're winning the bishop and there's no coming back here. The bishop can't really save itself by going to c8 simply because bishop takes c6 comes for free. The pawn can't take back because rook will take the queen. And yeah, there was nothing else to do because even then, even if you move the rook or anything and you swap the knight for the bishop, you're always going to be able to play bishop takes in c6. You're winning material. So in this position, we mentioned how knight c6 looks like a normal move, but instead it loses immediately. What happens after queen to c7? Thematic move. Okay, bishop to f4, exploiting this fianchetto structure. We always play bishop f4 in these positions. d6 doesn't make sense because you're attacking it more, with the rook. You're gonna make a fork, you're winning, it's game over. e5, guess what you're gonna play now? Bishop g5. Every time there's e4, e5 type of pawn structure and you can get to attack that knight, you're gonna be able to play knight d5 at some point, trading this tremendous this tremendous bishop light square bishop. It's too late now for black to come back from this. The problem is that this d pawn never moved, cannot move actually. And so the black player will have to play a terrible move like queen to d8, but then you can start piling the pressure over the pinned piece and you're winning this easily. A move like pawn just doesn't make sense, right? d6, because bishop f6 can happen, right? So the threat here will be, by the way, knight e8 is not possible because also bishop e7 just traps the rook. So here you have an idea of playing, let's say, I don't know, d6, whatever. You take the knight, this king is exposed, the queens are still on the board. Now a4, you're threatening to win a pawn. So b4, knight d5, threatening to put the knight into a square where he shall rule every chessboard and prove to be the strongest piece on the board, while our opponent will now be forced to take. And then we take back with the pawn, and after development, a5, bishop moves back, bishop to e4 comes now. The idea is to start piling the attack, creating pressure over the king side. Knight to c5, trying to eliminate this insanely strong bishop. Take it, and after queen takes back, queen check, king moves, queen f5, and now we're winning this game, unless our opponent gives us a piece. Queen takes, bishop takes, king takes, and we're winning this endgame easily. So let's take this from the start and look at something else. Still in the variation of the pawn storm on the queen side. So a6, g3, b5, bishop g2, and now the early bishop b7. Okay, d4, take, knight f6, queen e2. And earlier we went through bishop c5 move, but that allows us to to win a tempo. And knight b3 is a very well placed knight. What happens after queen to c7 early on, and this is one of the thematic moves, castle. And after knight to c6, in this case, looks like it's possible to play, but here's how you punish this move once again. Knight takes c6. And now taking with the pawn is wrong. But anyway, we're gonna go through both moves. Let's start with bishop takes. Now here you can play knight d5 immediately. It's a tremendous move. So what can black do? Okay, retreating the queen is just passive. Let's say for example queen d8, but now you can pin the knight. And then when the bishop goes to e7, rook a to d1 is the best move. Don't be tricked by the idea of the dopamine hit. Knight takes e7, queen takes back, and then e5, winning a piece. Don't be tricked by this, because there's always a way out. h6 here doesn't work, obviously, because you can take the knight with an attack on the queen. But the best move by black will be bishop takes. And if you take the knight, pawn takes back with an attack on your bishop. So you have to take the bishop. And now you can argue that the knight is still pinned, but queen c5 is the best move. If you take the knight, queen takes bishop, it's completely fine for black to play like this. Although white still has a slight advantage. But so don't be tricked by that move and try to learn this move, this pattern, because learning these things will make your rating go up a lot. So in this position, bishop e7, rook a to d1 is the most accurate way to continue. And now castling will be punished, because knight takes, queen takes, e5, bishop takes, king takes, and now queen to c5 with the exact same plan as before doesn't work, because you're going to take with the bishop. Pawn takes back, and this is a much better endgame for white to play. You're going to attack on an attack on d7. The queen can't really move away without being very careful to queen g4, queen g7 idea. And let's stop this here so I can show the other line. Here, knight takes c6. We're mentioning bishop takes. Here we play knight d5. What happens when the knight does take us? Because it's a tremendous knight. Okay, pawn takes back, and now there's an attack on the bishop. Bishop b7. And now bishop to f4. Development is complete. There's no coming back here. We are going to take the pawn in e6, then the one in f7 is completely over. If the bishop blocks, for instance, okay, take, and now pawn takes, and there's an attack, discover attack on this bishop. Best way, it's kind of pointless here to even show. We're going to win a lot of material, so bishop takes. Here you take the pawn in d7, check. Either way, whether the king goes to d8 or takes the pawn, the best move to continue is simply king to g2. And the opponent king will be subject to potential pin. The queen will be subject to pins. It's a terrible position to play, and it's game over. So in this position, what happens when the pawn takes the knight? You might wonder if that works. Well, this bishop is now penalized. But you can say, okay, c5, c4 at some point, and this is a normal game. It is. As a matter of fact, this is still better for white. But this actually is the safer option. However, e5 comes. Knight to d5, and now, surprisingly, rook e1. This is because there's an e5, e6 pawn here, and the opponent bishop, dark square bishop, is still in the background. So when it develops, you're going to play queen g4, inducing a weakness on the king side. So look what happens here. As you notice, knight can take in c3, breaking up pawn structure, take back, and now bishop to c5. But you play the thematic queen g4, attacking here. Then what's going to do? What's our opponent going to do? f5 doesn't work. The queen is defending g7, but you can just take en passant. And now this queen, the king is completely exposed. Position valuated +4 or something like that. Castle. You might wonder here, don't be tricked by this move now. Bishop h6. Don't play this beginner type of moves. We all know that that's threatening checkmate, but can it be stopped? Okay, f5 does stop it because the queen is now defending it. What have you achieved? Nothing. If you take, the opponent can take back with the rook. You're helping your opponent to develop. So don't play these quick checkmate ideas unless they're unstoppable. Bishop g5 is the best move here. And now obviously a move like bishop to e7, trying to swap with this tremendous bishop, doesn't work because now bishop h6 is indeed possible. Black will have to play this move and lose the exchange. So if instead of that, I don't know, king h8 to unpin potentially the pawn in g7 and play rook g8 or something. Okay, too late. Queen h4. And nothing stops us from playing bishop e4, exploiting the fact that black player decided to take the pawn, the square c6 with the pawn, and now the bishop in b7 is useless. So bishop e4 is coming, and the black player will have to sacrifice a lot of material to continue this game. Okay, let's close this video by showing another line. This is now still in the same a6 idea. So a6 main move, g3, but now instead of b5, we're gonna go to the early d5. Okay, how to respond to this? Take. Now d4. We're going to isolate the pawn. If black takes us, then this pawn is isolated. It's going to be subject to attack in the future. We're going to take it no matter what. It's actually very easy to take that isolated pawn. So let's look at c4. Okay, bishop to g2 comes now. And after b5, we are looking at something that is similar. At the end of the day, we respond with this with queen check. Bishop block is now met with knight d5. This is a great move. Queen can't really take back, because knight h4 comes with an attack on the queen. The knight is protecting the bishop, and the bishop is attacking the rook as well, so that's a skewer. Queen to e6 comes. Best move to continue is queen takes, bishop takes, and after bishop takes, pawn takes. Best moves now, knight to f6, rook to g1 now, attacking the weak pawn, knight to g4, stopping all that. a4 is the best move. Obviously we would like to take this so that the rook is on an open file. So b4 is obviously coming, bishop to d2 developing and attacking. a5, f3, the knight will have to move. This is just an indication how the game will go on more or less, but you're completely winning already, as you notice. Rook to g5 is the death blow. So as we notice, queen takes d5 is a blunder. So here we notice that after bishop e7 we are punishing the black player for moving too many pawns. What happens after a normal developing move like knight c6? Okay, knight to e5 comes, and now the bishop is defending the knight. We don't have to worry, and we are happy to swap this. Knight to d4 comes now. Looks like an excellent move because it wins the pawn. It's attacking the queen. How do we respond to this? Queen e4, protecting c2. That knight is not going anywhere. Knight e6, best move. Knight to b6, attacking the rook. And now, obviously, the queen taking in b6 is not a good move because queen takes rook with an attack on the bishop, pinning it. There's no compensation at all for black. A move like rook to a7, getting the rook away from that, is met with the thematic queen c6 check. And now, you see, we have 1, 2, 3 attackers. We are at the very least winning the exchange, not to mention that we can play the bishop and rook to d1 anytime we want. If king moves instead, we're just going to take the bishop for free. So here in this position of what happens if rook to b8. Same thing. Queen check, king moves, and now the best move is knight check. And we're winning the rook. If bishop takes back, well, same thing, knight check again. But this is going to go much worse than simply winning the rook, as you can tell.